Welcome, everyone, to tonight's October monthly discussion for the Girlfriend Book Club. I'm Shelley Emling, the editor of the Girlfriend newsletter. I'm also the moderator of this fabulous Girlfriend Book Club. And the more than 113,000 members of the book club chose as our October pick, The River is Waiting. And as always, you picked a great one, and especially this one. I have to just say on a personal note that I finished this on a recent Saturday afternoon, and I was sobbing, and my husband was like, "Are you okay? What is going on with you? What's happening?" And I said, "This is just such a beautiful read. I haven't read anything like this in years." And I said, I just could not stop crying about it, and I thought about it for the weeks afterwards. So we're so pleased to welcome New York Times bestselling author of The River is Waiting and so many other books, Wally Lamb. So welcome to the Girlfriend Book Club.
Thank you, Shelley, and thanks for that wonderful introduction.
I have to say that I don't ever lie when I do these things, and I really was sobbing when I finished this book, and my husband really did say, "Are you okay?" It was really like that. So
I shed a few tears writing the thing too, particularly toward the end.
So I was going to ask you, how you came up with the idea for the book, but then I saw some interviews that you've done, and I've heard that you always start with a character that you are worried about. I think you said in your interview with Oprah Winfrey that you don't start with an outline, which is kind of unusual for authors, I think. But you get an idea you get your ideas elsewhere. I think in this case, you got an idea by reading a newspaper article about something similar happening, and then you come up with the character first before you do the outline. So can you just tell us about how that process works?
Yeah, well, it's different for each of the books that I've written. The article that I had read was about the prevalence of something called backover accidents, where there is no backup camera in a car, and very often, sadly enough, the victim is a toddler, and and even with backup cameras, sometimes the kid is very short, and it doesn't get captured. And so that's where I started. What if there was, one of these horrible things that happened to a character of mine and his family, and also there's another complication with the story in that this character has become addicted to anti-anxiety medication and has begun to drink as well during the day when he's taking care of his 2-year-old twins. So that was where I started, and as you said, I never know where I'm going with it. So I have to research along the way, and I do worry about these characters. I become them. I always write first person, so I stretch beyond the limitations of my own pretty happy life, and I become somebody else for my working day. And so that's how I get the feel of the character, by becoming that person.
So in this case, the character is not your age. He's a younger man, probably the age of one of your sons.
True.
So you came up with this idea of the character, so you started writing, but you really didn't know how it was going to play out. Is that right?
Yeah, and I knew right from the start that I wanted to ask readers a question and involve them, not just write a story, but try to involve the readers too by asking, is this thing that has happened forgivable? Can he forgive himself? Can his wife forgive what has happened? Because she didn't know that he was drinking alcohol during the day while he was being Mr. Mom and so forth. So I wanted the readers to answer that question for themselves. And I'm not stacking the deck. I think readers, have a perfect right to decide for themselves whether his act is forgivable or not. I'm always championing redemption
Yeah.
of characters who are less than perfect, and so I was kind of rooting for him to figure something out, but I didn't know because I had to keep writing to figure out, what the next part of the story was going to be.
So I always ask authors this question, and you've probably been asked this many times before, but was there a particular character or scene or chapter that was more challenging for you to write that you had to work harder on than the others?
Yeah, I'd say probably right off the bat in the first couple of chapters, the accident itself. How do you go on from there? And at the time, we have 5 grandchildren now, but at the time we had a 3-year-old son, a grandson rather, our grandson Ethan, and his little baby sister, who was she was an infant, and I began to sort of imagine, what if something terrible like this had happened to him? And so I was scared. I was scared for him. In fact, I called up my son who lived down in New Orleans with his family, and I said, "Hey, my car has a backup camera, and I had just gotten the car, so it was new." And I said, "If you fly up, I'll give you the car, I'll give you the keys, you can drive back, and I'll just get something else." And
Right.
that's what happened, and that made me relax a little bit.
Yeah. So you gave him your car. Good idea.
Yeah.
So in this book, Corby, the main character, is a good dad for the most part. He's married, he had a job, he did lose his job. Um, so and then things spiral downward for him. So what made you take Corby, this pretty good guy at the beginning, like down this path?
Well, addiction is something that I have wrestled with myself in terms of abuse of alcohol. I was a late bloomer. This started happening to me, or I started making it happen when I was in my 50s. It was a tough time in my life. My parents were aging, and became pretty needy. My mother had a bad stroke. My father had Parkinson's disease. We have 3 sons, and our youngest is started out as our nephew, who we adopted, and he was having a very tough adjustment. He was 4 years old; had just turned 4, and and then I had a big book contract that was sort of looming, and I found myself really struggling to write it, and with everything else that was going on. So I began to take nightly vacations via, single malt scotch, which was maybe a little bit of comfort at the beginning, and then it turned into a pretty big problem. So I drank alcoholically for about 10 years, and the some of the church basements that Corby is in, I've had experience in those. I've been in a 12-step program now for about 15 years, and it
Yeah.
helped me crawl out of the black hole that I had fallen into.
So you knew exactly what Corby would be going through. Yeah.
Yeah, and also, the prison stuff. I didn't, I've never had to go to prison, for a felony or anything. But I worked with female inmates at a Connecticut maximum security prison, and I did that volunteer work for about 20 years. And when the women felt that they could trust me and trust one another, they began writing autobiographically, and so they were writing. A lot of them were writing about, why, what the conditions were that led them to go to prison, and also a lot of them were writing about what it's like once you're in prison. And so I had a 20-year education. Now, granted, a men's prison and a women's prison are different, but there's a lot of things that are the same. And so they educated me, I think, probably more than I taught them.
So I was gonna ask you about that. I mean, what was your biggest takeaway from volunteering for 20 years in a women's prison?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And would you ever go back and volunteer again?
20 years. 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 20 ye I would, and if I was welcomed back, but also my big takeaway, I think probably more than anything else, it um, taught me the value of humility, and you know, uh, there but for the grace of God go I,
Right.
there were I worked with a lot of women who had done one terrible thing in their life, and then they had like 20-year sentence, 50-year sentence, and so forth. So yeah, I think gratitude, was a big takeaway, but also I felt that to a certain extent we're all vulnerable, and
Mhm.
anything could happen to any of us. And they were so honest. They were so forthcoming. A lot of them had been incested by a father or a grandfather or a big brother or cousin or something like that. And so it was wonderful when they began to trust the group and the dynamic of the group,
Right.
because it allowed them to get that big bag of rocks. In terms, I'm talking about these terrible secrets
Mm.
that they were warned they had to keep. And when they began to release those secrets, I could see the therapy that was going on. I'm not a therapist, but I know that writing group is therapeutic. Mm.
So, what did you learn about yourself when you were writing The River is Waiting? I saw, as I said earlier, your interview with Oprah Winfrey, and I believe you said you became angrier about social injustice while you were writing the book. Is that right? Is there anything else you learned about yourself while you were writing The River is Waiting?
Let me explain the social justice thing. Uh, you know, Almost all of my writing, the stories that I've written, have concern power and powerlessness of various
Yeah.
sorts, and how sometimes power is abused. And so, I depicted some of that with the prison guards, and also, and not only, there are a lot of prison guards who are not bad guys for sure,
Right.
but there are some who are there for the wrong reasons. And so that was the power struggle that I was dealing with then. And also, um, the racial injustice. The first time I walked into that prison, I noticed, there were, far and wide, there were black and brown inmates, and much fewer white inmates. And so I think there's, and remains an imbalance between the way the justice system treats you, depending on the amount of melanin in your skin. And so that made me angry. And then, of course, I don't want to get too political, but I, I'm not I'm not really pleased with what's going on in our country these days. And I believe that, there is injustice and a terrible misuse of power.
Yeah.
So, I deal with these things in my stories, but also, I'm out there with my placard, you
Yeah.
know, in a big street crowd as well.
So a couple of the book club members wanted me to ask you about the title of the book, The River is Waiting. Is the river a metaphor for something? How did you come up with that title?
Well, I always, and this is back from my first book, She's Come Undone, to the present one. I have a big love of music, and so I always get a title from either a lyric or a title of a song or whatever. And I found when I was writing this, I think I Googled or I don't know. I went online and I said songs that have river in them, and this one popped up, and it's a song that was written by John Fogerty of Creedence Clearwater Revival. And then I found a wonderful version of it, a cover by the New Orleans Queen, Irma Thomas, and that's just a beautiful, powerful version of it. And so the river, yeah, you know, when I when I'm writing, I don't know really what the story means.
Mhm.
I have to kind of figure that out when I get to the end of the story, the first draft I'm talking about. And so there is a river that is just beyond the prison, uh, the prison compound, and Corby hears the sound of the river,
Right.
moving water, and then finally he gets to see it when he's on a detail working the grounds crew, and uh, and whereas if you're stuck in prison, you're stuck, and just beyond you there's a river that can keep going, keep moving. And so for me it was a metaphor for life keeps going, Corby. Don't You're not gonna you have to be hopeful, that you will be, you will go, and you will travel by the river when your time is up. And then a version of that actually happens with Corby,
Yes.
not necessarily what readers expected, but and I
Right.
don't want to do any spoilers, but yeah. So there is it happens toward the end.
So did you base that prison on any particular prison location? I'm just curious.
Well, yeah, it's, I learned things, as I said, from going to York prison. I love the way these prisons call themselves correctional institutions.
Right.
They're prisons, and if you want to correct yourself, you pretty much have to do it. You have to be motivated, self-motivated,
Mhm.
and so yeah, there's a lot of structural things I picked up from that prison. But no, it's not and I didn't research any other prisons except online. And there I learned things like, colloquial, slang expressions. And
Yeah.
I read a lot of male inmates who get out and then, write about the experience. So, that the nonfiction stuff that I read helped me to write the fiction.
So in your opinion, I know you've volunteered in a prison for 20 years. Is there a lot of rehabilitation that goes on in prison?
There is some, yeah, but I think again it has to be something that the prisoner wants to work hard at, and part of the way that you do that is you self-reflect. Nobody set out to go to prison. It happened in their lives
Yes.
for one reason or another. And so, when you go back and you reflect on your history, you can, well, let's put it this way. Prison is like a maze, and a prisoner is like stuck in a maze. And if you begin to reflect on how you got there, then you can rise above the maze. If I'm in a maze, I'm sort of stuck as far as how to get out of it. But if I'm rising above it, I see the logic and I also see the exit signs. So I'm pleased that a lot of the women who worked in our group and then eventually got out, they're doing really well, because they've learned about things, they've
Right.
learned about themselves, and so there has been rehabilitation in that way.
How long did it take you to write, The River Is Waiting?
Well, my second grandchild, my granddaughter Olivia, as I said, was an infant when I started, and she is now she is in first grade. So it was about 6 years.
Oh, my daughter's name is Olivia too. I love that
Oh,
name.
really? Yeah, yeah. There are a lot of Livias, more than
There
there
are
used to
now.
be.
Um,
No more Nancy or Mary or
yeah.
Kathy.
So since the Girlfriend Book Club is from AARP, I just have to ask you, how has growing older impacted how you write or what you want to write about?
A really great question. I was bound and determined. I'm not very good at math, so in past books I usually assigned the character my birthday so I can keep track of the years and so forth. But I was determined, as you picked up, to write a book about a character who was about my son's ages. I have one son who just turned 40, and another one who is I think 44, and then one who is in his 30s. That, you know, when you're writing, when you're becoming a younger person, you know, you're going to have different experiences than, say, somebody my age. I'm 74, and so you know, my coming of age was different than their coming of age, and so in all kinds of ways. And so it was cool to explore that. And also, I think the older you get, the more perspective you have. You know, your lens becomes wider, and you can see like a bigger picture. You can see patterns that repeat themselves and so forth. So, so yeah, first of all, I love that question. I've done a lot of interviews, and this is the first time I've gotten that question. And so
Well,
cheers to you, Shelley.
well, I have a follow-up to that. Also talking about age, does success mean something different to you now at your age? You said you're 74, than when you started writing, you know, years ago. Does success look different now?
Well, yes, I think so. I never, when I started writing, I didn't have any fantasies that I was going to get published or become a best-selling author or anything like that. I didn't, you know, money has never been my motivator. But however, when the books began to sell well, you know, with Oprah's endorsement and so forth, I began to be very well, first of all, the book sale, the book contract got bigger, and I was intimidated by that, and I was so worried that I was going to disappoint my readers, who now were, you know, in the millions, not just my wife and a couple of friends that I passed it on to, and that kind of, you know, that's the double-edged sword of success, you know, can I do it again? Can
Right.
I make a better book and so forth? And so yeah, I really hit the wall for a while there after the second book came out and did well. So my third book took me 9 years to write, and that was the period when I was drinking. So not exactly a productive time for me. But
Wow.
it was about fear. It was about being afraid that I was going to fail. And so as far as success, I don't worry about that kind of stuff anymore. You know, success for me is about friendships and the people that you love. And I know that sounds corny,
No.
but it's true for me. Yeah, and probably for you too, I imagine.
Yeah. So growing older, has it changed what you wanna write about, I guess I should say? I mean,
Yeah, I
this
think so, because right now I'm starting a novel about a woman who is she has a phenomenal memory, but she was born in 1897. So I'm going way back, and then I'm going to tell her story in chunks, and I'm writing in her voice. And I don't think I would have taken on that assignment when I was a younger writer.
so can I
She's a
just
hun- she she's 103 when the
Oh,
story begins.
wow. So can I just ask you, what's the best thing about being the age that you are now, which I believe is 74? What's the
Yeah,
best thing about being that age?
perspective. I'm not any smarter, but I hope anyway that I'm wiser than I had, and I'm really glad that if if the material success came to me I'm grateful that it came to me when it did. I think if I had had a bestseller when I was in my 20s or even my early 30s, I think I could have been a real jerk about it. But and kids keep you humble too. If I'm going to tell you a very quick story about when the first time that I hit #1 on the New York Times list, and I was I was just having like this moment, looking at the New York Times book review. Uh, I just was like, I can't believe this. But right at that time, my son Justin, who was I think about 10, maybe younger, and he comes walking by me. He's not looking at me, but he's carrying one of those magic 8 balls, one of those things that
Right.
tell the
Yeah.
future. Yeah. And so he says without looking at me, and he's crossing my path, and he says, "Is my dad a dork?" And and then he shakes it, and then he reads it, and then he looks up at me and he says, "My sources say yes." So, if you're in danger of being puffed up by, your good luck, your good fortune, if you have kids around, they
Yeah.
will humble you quickly.
I know. I have 3 kids just like you, so I know
Yeah.
what you're talking about. I just wanted to mention that last month we had Frederick Bachman on with us. His book, My Friends, was our pick for September, and he mentioned at the end of the interview, when I brought up that The River Is Waiting was our October pick, that he just read this. He loved it. It was one of his favorite books. Which surprised me because I didn't expect him to say anything at all. So is there an author or book that you would recommend to the rest of us, somebody you've discovered in the last couple of years, a book or an author that you really love?
Well, she's been around for a while, but I just recently read some of Adriana Trigiani's work, and I'm half Italian and she's Italian, so I kind of like that, that entry into it. And yeah, I was out in Colorado before this book came out, and I was doing promotional things with several of the younger writers, and I really enjoyed listening to them and hearing about their stories and so forth. So yeah, those are just a couple of people I'm thinking of.
So I just a couple more questions really quick. What is your process like for writing? Do you get up at a certain time and you make sure you write from 9 to 5 or something? I mean, how do you do? How does your process work?
I get up usually. I'm out the door and on the way to the gym by 6:30 in the morning. I like to get the blood going, creatively. It's a good thing to do. And then I come home at about, I don't know, 8:30. I'm having breakfast, and 9 o'clock in the morning I'm turning on the laptop, and I usually will write until about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, with lots of breaks so that I can come upstairs and get snacks and have way too much coffee. But yeah, my creative brain for some reason just automatically shuts off somewhere in the early afternoon, and
Yeah.
then I can I have a part-time assistant, and she helps me with correspondence and that kind of thing. So I can do that. It's not like my workday is over, but I'm doing now the business end of writing. But I love the creative end much more.
So, as you mentioned, you're 74. You've got this book out. What would you tell older people, not older people, what should I say? People maybe over 60, if they want to do something for the first time, maybe write a book for the first time. I know Delia Owens, who wrote Where the Crawdads Sing, wrote her first book in her 70s, I think. What would you tell people that are older, like, have faith in yourself? I mean, you can do anything at any age. What would you say?
I would say that, but I would also say humble yourself to the process. I think a lot of people have fantasies of sitting down with no writing experience and writing something, and bam, suddenly everybody wants to read it. And at least for me, and a lot of I work in a writers group, so I have friends who are long-term writers, and a genius first draft just is not something that happens. So you have to be patient, and if you can, get feedback from other people, share your work. Don't just sit in a garret and then come stumbling out 3, 5 years later and say, okay, this is it. So I would say humble yourself to the process. Don't chase away any fantasies that this is going to be a big hit, a bestseller, or whatever. If that's going to happen, that would be nice, but that should not be your motivation.
So 2 more questions. I just thought of another one. Is The River Is Waiting, is this your favorite book that you've written? And is this anybody talking about making this into a movie?
It is, I do have a movie agent. She's shopping it around now. I haven't gotten any word yet. But she usually keeps her cards close to the vest and then lets me know when something seems like it might happen. Uh, and what was the other part of your question?
Well, is this your favorite book that
Oh
you've written?
yeah, yeah. No, I can't. Who's your favorite who's your favorite child of those three? Yeah, it's like I can't. I can say some of the books were harder to write. Some of the books were fun to write. But I don't know. I can't say that I have a favorite. You know.
And one final question. So at age 74, I know you love to write. I'm sure you love to read. What else do you love to do for fun at this time in your life?
Well, I do enjoy the gym, and the reason I enjoy it is because for the rest of the day, I'm going to be by myself, and if I want to talk to people, I have to make them up first, you know. But at the gym, and I have to confess that it's about 1 to 1 how much exercising I'm doing and how much talking I'm doing. Uh, I've been teased that, oh yeah, I'm the mayor of the gym in the 6:30 to 7:30 hour. And so it's nice to have that socialization. I like doing that. I'm very close to the people in my writers group, and sometimes we'll go to the movies, or we always have a meal. Whoever's house is hosting,
Right.
we'll so we have that kind of conviviality before we get down to business with everybody's writing, and I love doing that. We have my wife and I are fortunate enough to have a little place in New York City. We live out in the country here in Connecticut, but I like the rural life that I have, but I also like the city life that we dip into maybe once a month or so. So I love plays. I love Netflix a little too much,
Me too.
and I do love to read as well.
So I guess say one final question. So at what would you say at age 74 is the secret to being vital and being vibrant and living your best life at this age in your 70s?
Stay active, engage in things that are not only enjoyable but also challenging.
Right.
I'm challenged by my stories. I've just sort of had a breakthrough on the one that I'm working on now, but I had 2 weeks of spinning my wheels and stuff. But it's again that perspective thing, because I've done it for a while, and I've written now. This will be my 8th book. I know that when you're stuck, that you're going to get unstuck. And I used to be afraid that I was going to stay unstuck.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's one of the benefits of being older, and so I like my age, but again, I don't have any terrible disabilities, or so far so good. And I live in our place in New York is right across the street from Mount Sinai Hospital, and I see people coming and going who are really, they're struggling either physically or whatever, and I count my blessings, and I count my blessings for my wife too.
So it sounds like staying active, staying socially connected with friends,
Mhm.
challenge yourself. That's all really important as you grow older.
And don't, and I'm sometimes guilty of this. I have been, but don't get too addicted by social media and reels from on Instagram and so forth.
Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I think everybody watching has probably read this already. The River is Waiting, but please recommend it to your family and friends that may not have read it, because it's such a fabulous read. And stay on the book club web social page for a while, because I'm going to be posting some conversation starters. And just a reminder that our book pick for November is The Correspondent, and the author will be joining us the third Tuesday of the month as always. So thank you so much. And I have to say, like I said before, love this book. So thank you for writing it. It was amazing. And thanks for joining
Hey,
us.
And can I say one thing to
Sure.
your book club people, and that is I'm really very grateful that you chose this book, and I wanted to make sure that that you knew that.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks for choosing this book. And good night, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.